Hello, welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you're watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with another update coming out from the war between Russia and Ukraine, and I've got a huge lineup of news that I'd like to brief all of you on today. So today's date is March 26, 2025, and it's Wednesday. We've got a lot of news to cover in this war today, and a very big update to start this video off. Russia's defense ministry accuses Ukraine of violating the ceasefire. Russia's defense ministry on Wednesday accused Ukraine of violating a 30-day pause on attacks against energy infrastructure, which Moscow claims has been in effect for more than a week. Okay, so very interesting story coming out, and probably doesn't surprise many of you. Literally just 24 hours later, we already have Russia accusing Ukraine of violating the ceasefire. Apparently, they're stating that Ukraine launched some drones down to Crimea and allegedly targeting a gas storage and some ground equipment. So it doesn't look like we had any hits down there. Maybe those drones were intercepted if they were fired, but Russia is accusing them today, and Ukraine's general staff coming out and refuting that, basically saying that Russia is a bunch of liars and this is not true. So we're going to go over all that information today and see if that happens to affect anything here. I'm thinking probably not, but we could see some sort of response coming from Russia here very soon as well. We also have a story coming out today that the EU has rejected Russia's demand to lift sanctions on one of their key agricultural banks. And they were calling for this yesterday. Russia was stating that they would agree to a Black Sea ceasefire if they had restrictions lifted on some of their banks that they use to export agricultural goods. I think fertilizer also. That's a big part of what Russia is demanding in order to achieve this ceasefire. But it looks like they're agreeing to it in principle, but apparently they're not completely agreeing to it just yet until they get these sanctions lifted. And the EU basically came out today and told Russia to take a hike. They're not going to do that. They're not lifting any restrictions on Russia right now. They're keeping maximum pressure campaign onto Russia, while at the same time they're not going to release any of the seized assets, the 300 billion that's currently being held in banks across Europe. They're not going to release that either, and eventually they might try to even give that to Ukraine. We also have a story today in Lithuania that 4 American soldiers apparently were killed. And we're going to do a separate video on that today, and I'll go more in depth in that, as there's not a whole lot of information coming out just yet. But apparently they were on some sort of training exercise in Lithuania, close to the border of Belarus, which is interesting because it's right next to Belarus. And these men went missing, 4 of them, in like a track vehicle. And apparently they were found dead. Okay, so we're going to go over all these details today, guys. Lots of big news to cover in today's update. Let's hop on over here to X now. So with war translated, not even a day has passed, and Russia is already accusing Ukraine of violating the truce. All right, so we've got this post that was on Telegram. It's obviously in Russian, but we've got it translated here for you. And it says the Russian Ministry of Defense stated that the Kiev regime continued strikes on Russia's energy infrastructure despite Zelensky's statement on March 24th. On the night of March 26th, 2 Ukrainian UAVs were shot down near the coast of Crimea, with the target reportedly being ground equipment at the Lebovka gas storage facility, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense. The ministry also claimed that Kiev, by continuing to damage Russia's energy infrastructure, is doing everything possible to disrupt Russian-American agreements. Okay, so let me know what you guys think. Do you think Russia's lying about this, or do you think Ukraine actually launched this attack onto Crimea? I can't see why they would. They just agreed to not attack Crimea or the Black Sea at all. Russia's now coming out saying they did attack, and they're actually attacking a gas facility, which is part of this whole energy agreement that Ukraine and Russia are not supposed to be attacking right now. And allegedly, this is what Russia is claiming. So let me know what you guys think, whether you think that's true or not. But Ukraine's coming out and saying that Russia is basically lying about this. Here's a report from the Ukrainian Review. The statements of the Russian Ministry of Defense about Ukraine's alleged violation of the ceasefire conditions regarding energy facilities do not correspond to reality, says the General Staff of Ukraine. Thus, on March 25th to the 26th, the Ukrainian Defense Forces did not launch UAV strikes on Russian energy facilities in the Kursk and Bryansk regions, as well as energy facilities in the territory of Crimea temporarily occupied by the Russians. So it looks like maybe the Russians may have accused Ukraine of attacking energy facilities in Kursk and Bryansk, considering that their general staff is stating that. It should be emphasized that the military department of the aggressor country is spreading false and unfounded accusations, in order to prolong the war, continue false propaganda, and typical Russian attempts to deceive the world. So, I mean, that could definitely be a possibility too. Maybe Russia's doing this on purpose to try to sabotage these negotiations and potentially continue on this war. I've got a lot of reports talking about that today. That many leaders in the EU and part of a lot of organizations in Europe are basically stating that Russia has no desire to end this war at all. They actually want to continue, and I even have a report today that they want to move beyond the five regions they currently control inside of Ukraine. And I think many people would probably agree with that they want to take over Ukraine. It's pretty obvious at this point. Now, from the Ukrainian Review, Russia has struck 8 Ukrainian energy facilities since March 18th, according to Zelensky's advisor, Dmytro Litvin, if I'm saying that last name right. This date is considered the first day of the ceasefire, according to the Russian version. Okay, so yeah, Russia allegedly came out over the last 24 hours stating that basically the ceasefire has been in effect since the 18th of March, which was just a little bit over a week ago. And multiple times we've reported inside of Ukraine energy facilities getting hit, especially I think in Odessa. I think Odessa and a few other areas. I think Zaporizhia could have been one of them, but there was like multiple regions of Ukraine. Poltava also, there was a gas storage facility hit over there recently, and I believe some of these hits fell under or after, March 18th, when Russia's claiming that's when the ceasefire began. So they're apparently stating that they'll do this for 30 days. They'll agree to this for 30 days, but Russia's already attacked multiple energy facilities since March 18th. So it doesn't really make any sense. And actually, right after Russia and the United States, with Donald Trump, agreed to not attack any energy facilities. Just hours later, we had Ukraine being attacked already, and their gas storage facilities were being struck. I think that was in Poltava at the time. So now from Bliskovka, the U.S. did not include a clause on responsibility for violating the ceasefire in the war between Ukraine and the Russian Federation, said the advisor to the head of Ukrainian People's Party, Mikhailo Podolyak, if I'm saying that right. So Ukraine's pretty much saying that there's no clause on responsibility for violating the ceasefire. I guess that pretty much means that, what happens if there is a ceasefire violation? Does Russia if Russia, let's say Russia, they violate the ceasefire, is the U.S. going to slam them with sanctions, or what's going to happen here? If Ukraine does it, does Ukraine get any kind of repercussions? I guess there was really nothing on that in terms of this, no underlying conditions. If anybody happens to violate this ceasefire. So that's interesting news coming out today. So now we'll move on to the Ukrainian Review. Brussels has rejected Russia's demand to lift EU restrictions on a key agricultural bank as part of a partial ceasefire deal, saying its sanctions regime will stay in place until the unconditional withdrawal of Moscow's troops from Ukraine, according to the Financial Times. Okay, so that's apparently one of the demands from the EU. They're stating, okay, well, we'll go ahead and lift restrictions on you, but you need to pull all your troops out of Ukraine and basically give their land back. Then we'll go ahead and lift restrictions on you. Otherwise, we are leaving the restrictions. So to me, what this tells me is that Russia is not going to completely agree to a ceasefire in the Black Sea, because that was kind of one of their conditions for moving forward on this ceasefire. So we'll have to see how Russia responds to this. There hasn't really been a response as of yet today. But maybe we'll get that later today, maybe tomorrow. And we might hear maybe the ceasefire is going to fall apart. Who really knows what happens here in the Black Sea? But that was coming out from the EU today. Okay, big report. Now for next to breaking, American soldiers killed in Lithuania. 4 American soldiers and a tracked transport vehicle went missing yesterday during military exercises near the Belarusian border in Lithuania. Today they were found dead, reports Delphi. Circumstances and the cause of their deaths are currently under investigation. So I did see one report earlier. I can't completely confirm it just yet, but I did hear a report that these 4 American soldiers reportedly drowned. Don't really know how they did, but we'll wait for more official reports. I'll do a second update later today on that, give you guys more information on this story, on what happened to these men. But there was some sources indicating on X that maybe they had drowned. But I'll get that confirmation for you later today. We'll do a whole update and talk about this because it's very big news. And if this happens to tie back to Belarus or Russia, or maybe just Russia in general, what's Donald Trump going to do? Because lately it seems like he's really been siding with Vladimir Putin. If this happened to be Russian soldiers that carried out this act, that's a very big provocation there. And, it's not very often that we hear American soldiers being killed, especially right next to Russia. So, very big news today. We'll cover that at a later time this afternoon. Now, from next up, hackers attacked the oil corporation Lukoil and seemingly took down the fast payment system. Today, people cannot pay at the pump with their cards, and Lukoil employees are unsuccessfully trying to log into their work computers. Additionally, Russia's fast payment system stopped working today. Users cannot transfer money from any banks or make purchases. There are also reports of a massive outage affecting several banks and mobile operators. Okay, so massive cyber attack looks like here on Russia's major oil company, Lukoil. Okay, so looks like a lot of their systems going down today, can't access payments. So probably Ukraine doing this, attacking them. You can see here on this chart, lots of reports of outages here just today. Haven't heard any updates since how much effect has gone on with this company since they got hit by this cyber attack. But we have reported Lukoil being attacked before with cyber attacks. So now from Azov South, Rostov-on-Don, Russia tonight. So this came out last night. These were attacks happening inside of Russia. We did have Ukraine launching drones into Russian territory. Looks like we had a massive fire breaking out over here in Rostov-on-Don. I don't really know what was hit over here, but we can see a lot of fires happening here in the area of the city of Rostov-on-Don. This is southwestern Russia. Now from Jay in Kiev, Trump's genocidal push to give Putin everything has only increased Russia's attacks all over Ukraine. Ukraine isn't allowed to strike Russian energy assets. Russia gets sanctions off, and Putin can increase massacres on Ukraine's civilian population. The city of Kryvyi Rih now. So if Kryvyi Rih got attacked last night once again, this is video footage showing some explosions over here from Russian drones. And something I wasn't able to add into our video yesterday regarding sanctions on Russia was the U.S. is actually thinking about lifting sanctions right now. Trump said this during a meeting yesterday with reporters. And he's allegedly thinking about lifting some restrictions on Russia in terms of sanctions in exchange for this Black Sea ceasefire deal. Okay, so that's some big news regarding that. Now from Max 24 again, at least 15 explosions were heard in Kryvyi Rih, and he says, quote unquote, ceasefire. Okay, so we can see lots of fire here once again in Kryvyi Rih, and this city's been getting hit so much recently over the last few weeks. Russia attacked it once again with swarms of drones. You can see a lot of businesses here on fire. Looks like a parking lot's also potentially on fire here, maybe some cars. So lots of damage there. Now from the Ukrainian Review, in Kryvyi Rih, even the roadway is on fire. The massive UAV raid lasted for about an hour. So I've got a 9-second clip of, we've got a road here, and there's some fires on the side of the road from these drone attacks from Russia last night in Ukraine. Take a look. Right, so we can see Kryvyi Rih inside of Ukraine was heavily attacked last night by Russian drones. Even the side of the roads over here catching on fire due to probably falling drones. Now for next, Trump accused Putin of stalling negotiations while admitting he himself used to do the same in business. I've done it over the years, U.S. President says, of using stalling tactics when negotiating contracts. Recall, Ukraine immediately agreed to an initial proposal for a full unconditional 30-day ceasefire earlier this month, but Putin quickly rejected it and continues to bomb, kill, and bargain. So Trump allegedly coming out, I think this was actually breaking yesterday evening, but Trump basically stating that Russia, he's confirming that Russia is stalling negotiations, but at the same time kind of giving Russia the pass and saying, well, I've done that before while I'm negotiating contracts, but this is obviously like business deals. We're talking about a war over here where people are dying. Every minute that goes by, more innocent people are dying. Whether it's on the Ukrainian side or the Russian side, whether people want to be part of the war or they don't, there's a lot of people losing their lives in this war over here, okay? And then just think about the innocent civilians that are getting attacked every single night. So I don't think that's really a good excuse to give for Vladimir Putin to say, well, I've negotiated contracts like this before. That's obviously through a business deal. But when it comes to war, I feel like there should be heavy pressure being put on Vladimir Putin at the same time, especially considering that Ukraine has already agreed to a ceasefire with Russia. Russia should come out and do the same and exercise the same understanding. But so far, we're not really seeing that from Russia. They don't look like they're in a hurry at all. And Trump basically backing them up on that. Excuse me. So now from Special Curse and Cat. Russian AN-12 cargo plane made a hard landing in Novi Urengoy, if I'm saying that right. The left landing gear failed to lock and the plane overturned during landing. Okay, so I'm absolutely afraid to fly on planes right now. I mean, all over the place, we're just having planes landing, having landing gear issues and crashing and just all over the place right now. And looks like we had another Russian plane here crashing over here in the snow, and allegedly their landing gear was not deploying. Okay, and we've seen this happen multiple times before. Looks like there was a fire truck here actually waiting for them as they knew they were going to have to crash like that. So as far as we know, everybody's okay in this plane, but it did crash here once again, and this is probably another big sign that Russia can't maintain any fleet of their cargo planes, or just their planes in general. Even a lot of their commercial airlines are not well kept, and a lot of them are falling apart. So I would not want to fly in Russia if I was living there. I'd be very afraid. Now, from the Ukrainian Review, if Russia believes that Ukraine's borders are just a line on a map, why should it respect the borders of any other country, according to Antonio Costa? And it says EC president said that Europe must have all the means to protect itself from military aggression. Peace without defense is an illusion. So yeah, this is the president of the European Council, Antonio Costa. So he's basically saying, kind of mocking Russia and saying, if they don't believe that Ukraine's borders are just, or if they believe that their borders are just a line on the map, then obviously they could attack any other country, right? And I think a lot of people agree with that Russia may attack another nation at some point. I mean, they're going to be having huge exercises inside of Belarus here very soon with like 100,000 troops. Lithuania's worried about invasion into their territory, or some of these Russian soldiers might cross over their border. And NATO just in general is worried about an attack in the future sometime by 2030 in the next 4 to 5 years. Okay, so that's obviously a real threat. Now for Max 24, Russia opened 3 new launch sites of Shaheeds, according to RBC Ukraine. In the near future, the number of drones launched may increase to 300 per day. The enemy is changing tactics and directing UAVs to one specific city to load air defense. Okay, so this is not good news, and we've been hearing a lot recently that Russia may even increase this up to 500 per day. Okay, they're creating a lot of new launch sites. We're going to see a lot of drones going into Ukraine. Lately, we've been seeing anywhere from like 100 to 200 every day, and this number could go up to 300 or more. Okay, so that's going to get much worse for Ukraine pretty soon. And if Russia's launching much larger swarms, it's going to be very difficult for Ukraine's air defense teams to bring all these down. So that's bad news for Ukraine. Okay, that was a new update from RBC Ukraine today. Now from next to breaking, Rutte, who's Mark Rutte, the Secretary General for NATO. He threatened Putin with a crushing blow and promised to defend Europe at all costs. During an appearance in Warsaw with Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, the NATO Secretary General said that the Russian Federation was and remains the biggest threat to the alliance. If anyone were to miscalculate and think they can get away with an attack on Poland or any other ally, they will be met with full force of this fierce alliance. Our reaction will be devastating. This has to be very clear to Vladimirovich, that's kind of hard to say, Putin, and anyone else who wants to attack us. So this is a statement coming out from Mark Rutte today. Go ahead and take a look at this real quick.
If anyone were to miscalculate and think they can get away with an attack on Poland or on any other ally, they will be met with the full force of this fierce alliance. Our reaction will be devastating. This has to be very clear to Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin and anyone else who wants to attack us.
Okay, so we've heard this statement come out before from Mark Rutte. He's probably said this 2 or 3 times just in the last 6 months that I've reported to you guys. So once again, just sending a direct message over to Vladimir Putin to let him know not to attack NATO, or their response will be very fierce and devastating. Now for Liskovka, in case of war with the Russian Federation, Poland would be able to defend itself for no more than 14 days, said the head of the Polish National Security Bureau, Dariusz Lukowski. Okay, so this is kind of interesting to me. I was actually shocked to hear this. Whether this happens to be true or not, you guys can let me know whether you believe that or not. But Poland is probably the largest defense spending nation out of majority of the NATO countries, maybe the highest. I know they're spending at least 5%, and they plan to go up higher than that at some point too, I think. So why would Poland only be able to sustain themselves for 14 days in a war against Russia. You guys can let me know what you think. But if that happens to be true, that's very dangerous. And I'm sure that's the case for a lot of NATO nations, as many of them are not prepared for war. And that's why Europe right now is panicking and trying to up their defense spending and start doing whatever they can to build up stockpiles of weapons and prepare for defense in case of any attack from Russia. That many NATO nations are not even ready to defend themselves, okay, if they come under attack. And Poland being one of the major military powers in Europe, you would think that they'd be able to withstand more than 14 days of fighting. But according to him, that's what he stated here. So let me know what you guys think on that. Now, for more translated, the Baltic countries understand that there is no such thing as NATO's Article 5 on collective defense, and never has been. Poland understands this, as our missiles and Russian ones periodically fall there. Romania understands everything too, but remains silent, according to Zaluzhny. So this is Valery Zaluzhny. He's the ambassador of Ukraine to the United Kingdom right now. He also used to be the former head of Ukraine's military. And he came out in like a little conference here, a meeting, and he was speaking to a bunch of people here, basically stating that NATO's Article 5 does not exist. Is kind of what he's saying. He's saying that some of the NATO members already understand that, like Romania and Poland, as we've seen both of those nations repeatedly have their airspace violated, drones crashing in their territory. Even Poland had a missile enter there just early last year, I believe. We talked about that when that missile entered into their territory. So take a look at this real quick, and we'll have subtitles.
Дивись, країни Прибалтики це розуміють дуже чітко. Вони розуміють, що нема ніякої там 5 статті. І ніколи не буде. Польща це розуміє. Куди періодично падають то наші ракети, то російські. Румунія взагалі все розуміє, тільки мовчить. І інколи дзвонить мені, каже, мовчи. Каже, ну впало 2 шахеда в порт до вас. Чого ви мовчите? Мовчи, каже, я тебе прошу, розумієш? А потім він дзвонить, каже, ти на що, каже, включив, каже, ці ваші реби, каже, вони, каже, полетіли до нас. Я кажу, то збивайте, кажу, у вас 40 F-16 стоїть. Ну, дивись.
Okay, so interesting, right? So he's basically stating that, many NATO nations understand that Article 5 does not exist. That's why these drones are entering into their territory and crashing. We've seen that just Romania alone, they've probably had 15 incursions into their airspace. Romania never shoots anything down. And I guess that's why some of the militaries from some of these NATO nations were contacting Valery Zaluzhny and telling him, why'd you guys turn on your electronic warfare? Now the drones are flying into our territory and not yours. Now we have to do something about it. And they don't want to shoot them down. So, I have to kind of agree with that. We've seen many times where NATO nations just aren't responding, and it's very strange. You would think that this would be an attack on NATO many times when these drones are blowing up in their territory. Even a missile one time entering into Poland. I think even maybe multiple times at some point we had missiles entering into Poland. So just very crazy story. And let me know what you guys think on that. Do you think that NATO's Article 5 actually doesn't exist and it's just there in principle, but they're never actually going to use it? I think it would have to be a very major attack that kind of can't be just pushed under the rug, basically, in order for them to respond, is kind of the way that I see that. Now, from the Ukrainian Review, a plan is being discussed to create 2 peacekeeping missions for Ukraine, one under the UN with troops from Asia and South America, and another with Western countries willing to send their forces, according to La Repubblica. Okay, so let me know what you think on this also, because obviously Russia's not okay with NATO troops inside of Ukraine. So we've had Volodymyr Zelensky here in the photo. He's come out and said he did not want UN troops on his territory. Because look at what's going on inside of Lebanon with Hezbollah over there. Okay, the UN has basically done nothing to prevent Hezbollah, from attacking Israel and preventing that war from breaking out again. So the UN, in a lot of ways, is not effective. Is kind of what Zelensky's been stating recently. And then if it happens to be Western countries, I would think it would have to be nations that are not part of NATO, but a lot of them are in NATO. So we'll have to see how that works out. You guys let me know what you think on that. Now, for Max 24, U.S. officials have privately assured European allies that President Trump supports NATO, will not withdraw nuclear weapons from Europe, and remains committed to collective defense. This was reported today by the New York Times. Okay, so who knows? Is Trump going to be committed to protecting NATO if they ever come under attack? A lot of people believe that maybe Trump will not be, based on a lot of the statements that's come out from this administration. I think it's highly likely they would not if they were ever to be attacked by Russia. But allegedly, Trump officials are coming out stating that he is committed to Europe's defense and, NATO in whole, basically protecting NATO. Now, for Vice Grad 24, the Washington Post reports that U.S. intelligence has assessed that Putin hasn't abandoned his goal of controlling all of Ukraine. The clarified assessment presented to officials in the Trump administration on March 6 states that Putin's goal isn't limited to just 5 regions. So here's that story, guys, that I was talking about towards the beginning of this video. And I think most people would agree with that Russia wants to take over not only all these 5 regions that they control right now, as you know, obviously all of them except for Crimea, they don't control in a whole. They do have majority of Luhansk, but not all of it yet. Obviously, I think a lot of people think that and understand that Russia wants to take over all of Ukraine. They probably want Ukraine gone and destroyed. It looks like there's stories coming out now that Russia wants to move well beyond the territories they're currently controlling, okay? Now, from next, Denmark will start conscripting women into the army next year, all because of Putin. Denmark has accelerated the introduction of mandatory military conscription for women, moving its start from 2027 to 2026. Bloomberg reports the reforms are intended to increase the size of countries' armed forces and help counter growing threats from Russia. Currently, women can join on a voluntary basis, while men are required to serve if they are called on under a lottery system devised to compensate for a potential lack of volunteers. Okay, so here's a report from Bloomberg today. Denmark speeds up plans for mandatory military service for women. Okay, so that's interesting. I mean, obviously, with the ongoing threat from Russia and NATO being concerned that they could be attacked, they want to make sure they've got enough service members. So now they're starting to have mandatory military service for women inside of Denmark. So pretty crazy news coming out from there. Now, from the Ukrainian Review, the Russian ship Crystal Asia, with 22 Russians on board, caught fire off the coast of South Korea. 6 crew members were injured, 2 of them in serious condition. Previously, the cause of the fire could have been an explosion or damage to a turbine in the engine room. Okay, so we've heard this multiple times now of engine rooms just catching on fire or explosions happening in the engine rooms. I'm not sure if these are sabotage events or what's going on here, but looks like we had yet again another rusted out Russian ship that's probably used to transport oil or something here. It looks like a bulk carrier. And this thing catching on fire, it looks like they had to evacuate the people on board. And some of these people being seriously injured, okay, after some sort of explosion and damage to the turbine of the engine room. So pretty insane news coming out from here as well. We've heard this multiple times, and maybe it's due to lack of maintenance on these ships, and maybe these things are just blowing up. Who really knows? Because we know a lot of these ships, you can see here, just look at the amount of rust on these. Just these things are falling apart. Or is this some sort of sabotage coming from maybe Ukraine or maybe even Europe? Who really knows what's going on here? Now, from next breaking, Russia will not return the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant to Ukraine, according to Russian Foreign Ministry. This was actually being widely reported yesterday. I believe I might have put out a community post talking about this, but if I didn't, just wanted to share this information with you guys anyway. Russia is not going to give Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant back to Ukraine at all. They're basically stating that it is owned by Russia now. They are not going to transfer it as a part of any negotiations. They are keeping it. Okay, so that's some big news coming out from Russia. Now, from X24, Ukrainian air defense shot down 56 out of 117 Shahed UAVs, 48 drones suppressed by electronic warfare. All right, so it looks like a good majority of these drones being brought down once again. Looks like right around 100 or so, whether it be shot down or suppressed by electronic warfare. 117 in total going into Ukraine overnight from Russia. Now, our final update of the day, the Kyiv Independent. These are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of March 26, according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. And our final update of the day, guys, Russia's losses as of March 26, 1,280 troops, 15 AFVs, 77 vehicles and fuel tanks, 5 tanks, 17 artillery systems, 59 UAVs, and 1 special equipment. Okay, so right off the bat, what I'm seeing here, very low numbers compared to what we normally see. Troop numbers right about the same, maybe AFVs about the same. We usually see 10 to 15 or so. 77 vehicles and fuel tanks, one of the lowest numbers we've seen in a while. We saw 74, I think, just about a week or so ago. But for the most part, it's been creeping up to like 130, 150 recently. And then only 5 tanks over the last 24 hours. And then right here, the artillery systems, much lower. We've been seeing like 60 to 80 on average over the last few days. and not really much else being destroyed. Maybe one special equipment, no MLRS today, or anti-aircraft warfare systems. So not a whole lot being destroyed on the Russian side over the last 24 hours. Probably some of the lowest numbers we've seen over the past few weeks. So I want to thank you guys very much for being here for this update on March 26, 2025 on Wednesday. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your week. And if you got something out of this update, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.